Hi, I'm Ruben from Conduction and welcome to this very short webinar about manifesting. And manifesting is what helps us to turn citizen coders into contributors, but I'll explain what we mean with that later. So what manifesting does for us is it helps us make agents safely create apps. And with safely, we mean very safely. Let's shortly dive into how we fix that, what this means for our ecosystem, the Nextcloud ecosystem, and let's show you a bit more of what's possible with that. So let's first quickly remind ourselves why we need safe agents. Well, to put it bluntly, agents make mistakes. And those aren't just bugs, those are serious security issues. We've talked about this in another webinar, but almost half of all agents shipped code contains serious security vulnerabilities, and that's something we do not want to introduce into the Nextcloud ecosystem. Now, if you want a deep dive in how we make agents write safe and stable code, then please follow the Hider webinar that explains how we've done that in Conduction, and we try to be very open with that so that other people can reuse it. But right here, we're going to take a different turn. And let's face it, any line of code is a potential security vulnerability and a potential bugs. So that makes it very blunt. The ideal amount of code is no code. If we do not want to have bugs, we do not want to have code. If we do not want to have security vulnerabilities, we do not want to have code. Okay, so that gives us a problem. How do we make an application without code? Well, it turns out that there's an entire market for that. And there are many apps and ecosystems out there that already allow you to configure applications, either through UI, through low code, semi-code. There are all kinds of different ecosystems out there, but they all share the same idea. You want to model an application. You want to use UI to build an application, and you want to enable people who aren't developers to actually develop, or to better say, to actually contribute to the ecosystem. And this is growing tremendously fast. So if we look at our platform, Microsoft obviously, then we can see that they are just exploding in users. They're adding almost 10 million users a year. Now, imagine if we could turn that power from that closed source ecosystem, that is, of course, Power Platform, into something that actually contributes to the open source ecosystem. What if we could have citizen coders develop apps without coding and then share them with each other? Now this is also where AI comes into play, and AI changes the game. So we now no longer need the learning curve. So one of the problems that we had earlier is that if we build a new app builder, then of course people need to learn to work with that app builder. But what if we build an app builder and we gave it an MCP or something that agents can talk to? Then now you can use an agent to actually configure your app. That does limit us greatly, because it also means that the agent will need access to the data. So that means that that concept will only work if we put it locally. You do not want to have an app builder using an agent to build apps while it's online and can touch all clients' data. That of course does fit into our original problem. So our original problem is, how are we going to make AIs develop safely? Well, the answer here is we're not going to make them develop at all. We're going to make them configure. But then in order to do that, we need to have them do it locally. This of course also solves the geopolitical problem, because we do not want to have our data outside of the European Union. That means that the next wave of app development and app building will probably be run local. And that, of course, gives us tremendous ability to have people build their own apps, but it also means that we need to have a platform where they can do it safely, and we need to have a way where they can actually share these apps with each other in order to build an ecosystem, or even better, from a European perspective, build an economy. Now, the funny thing is, we have this. We already have a data layer which contains all of our standardized objects like contact, emails, document, cases, all of them defined by standards, making them exchangeable. And that also has as external applications or the other open source projects that we will probably need to run this, like XWiki, Open Projects, and Calendar. And that data layer is Nextcloud. The only thing that we need to do is that we need to look at Nextcloud as a data layer. Now, something funny happens if we do that, because now we can build apps with this configurable AI app builder on top of Nextcloud. But if we build a CRM app and we stuff our contact data into Nextcloud, then we don't have to have our ERP app, which is also built on top of the Nextcloud application, or our booking system, which is also built on top of the Nextcloud data layer, connected with each other. Booking doesn't need to know about CRM. It can just access the data layer, Nextcloud, for contact details. That means that we can get a very much integrated ecosystem of apps that actually work together. That means that the apps we build might actually be better than the apps we built with the Power ecosystem. Okay, so that's a very interesting problem, but how did we actually fix that? Well, the one thing that we didn't want to do is we didn't want to end up with a new standard and a new logged in on an app builder. So we said, okay, we need to do three things, basically, if we want to build applications. We need to store data, we need to add business logic, and we need to have a user interface. Now, first, we did look at what standards there are. So for user interface, there is a very common grid library. Nextcloud has its own view library. We combined those two. Now we have Nextcloud elements and components on a grid library. Okay, so that makes the front end configurable. Then we have Nextcloud Flow, which already does some basic flows, and Windmill if we need more. We added DMN to that, and then we have a standard that we can tell Nextcloud Flow, okay, we want to have these actions, this business logic for application. And then we have Nextcloud Tables, and we did a very easy stretch on that where we said, okay, we want to have OpenAPI specifications rendered automatically for each table that we make, but we also want to have RBAC, role-based access, and we have GraphQL so that we can ask more interesting questions, that we can actually query the tables and build up with a database. Now all of these things on the right are actually JSON. That means that on the left, if we want to configure this, we can write a very large JSON file, which we call a manifest, and then every time we load the app, we load the manifest file into Nextcloud. Okay, that means that now our application has zero code. It just has a giant JSON file, and we can pass the JSON file along. We can build a store, we can send it over mail, we can WhatsApp it to a colleague. We have something that allows us to actually exchange apps. Now in practice that works like this. The manifest has its own API, it's an open register, and the front end exists out of components. And those components are all placed on a grid. So when the user logs into Nextcloud, the application asks at the manifest which components should I render, where, and then renders them. And then of course each component itself contains data, could be altered, might be edited, and if anything happens, sends that data back to Open Register, which then distributes it along the Nextcloud leaves. So one of the fun things about turning the application into a JSON file is that our application becomes lintable. So we can always check a JSON file if it adheres to the JSON schema it's supposed to, and we can check if it's valid. That gives us a very good protection against bugs being introduced by LLM. And of course, because it's only JSON, you can only put grid ecosystem on the user. It means that you're also very well protected against injection or other security threats. That's very nice. So that works very well if you want to do an app. But then, of course, you want our app to appear into the navigation of Nextcloud. We want our apps to pass the permission checks. We want our app to be multilingual. And we want our apps to actually appear if you have a certain subroute in Nextcloud where the app should live. So we did do a little bit of hacking, which we then confirm into the Nextcloud code. Now, of course, the grid system is very powerful, so you can basically build any page you want if you put any widget on any grid position. But there are pages that are very common, like an index page, a detail page, a dashboard, a setting page, etc. So what we did is we made custom pages. Now, custom pages can contain anything you want because they're grid system and you could put anything on the grid. And then we made 7 pages that we saw appeared a lot, and those are sort of preloaded. So you can always choose for a specialized page, or you can choose for something generic. Okay, so that's a cool technological story, but what does that bring us? Where are we now? What has this added to the Nextcloud ecosystem, and what can we show for it? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. So we've built several apps with this specific system, and they are quite rich. So you can design very well. You can do a lot of details. If you want to do a graph, you can use GraphQL to very specifically state what you want in the graph. You can make KPI cards. You can make small list of other objects. So you can do pretty much anything that you need if you want to build an app. And we actually also discovered that it's very easy to make the JSON scheme manageable. That means that you can actually create apps and alter applications from the UI. Now, of course, this is a bit tricky and it requires some more coding, so we made a specific app for it called OpenBuild, and that then allows you to use this manifest system to actually create your own apps and to design them in any way you want. Another thing that we did is we wrote a lot of tutorials on how you can actually use this system, this manifest system, to create apps. So if you're interested in building Nextcloud apps without any code, so basically just write a JSON file, then you can follow the tutorials and they will explain to you very precisely how you can do this. You can also just point your LMM to these tutorials and have your agent do it for you, just as long as the export contains JSON. We've also set up rich documentation online where each component gets explained to very great details, how it can react, which properties it has, etc. And that environment actually comes with its own playground. So you can see what happens if you change code in the component. That means that you can also use these components without using the manifest system, but it also means that you can see what happens with a component if you change something in your JSON scheme manifest and how the UI is going to reflect that. And there's actually a bit more because the manifest system writes its data to Open Register, and Open Register has some tricks up its sleeves. And one of the most awesome tricks that Open Register has up its sleeve is the leaf system. And it means that Open Register allows you to have the data you say for your app react with data in other apps or with the interface of other apps. And one of the coolest examples of that is email. So we built a lead system or CRM package pipelink on Nextcloud. And because we're using Open Register, that automatically integrates with the email. And that means that as a user, you can open your email, your normal mail client in Nextcloud, and then on the right side, you get additional options. In this case, you can assign any incoming email directly into a lead. But this also, of course, works with case management, issue management systems, etc. So this allows you to have interactive elements in other Nextcloud apps interact with the data or the business logic in your app. And that again makes for a very complete ecosystem of apps that actually work together to provide a communal workspace for a user. And that, of course, this is why we do it in JSON. JSON is very steady, it's very lintable, it makes sure that it survives upgrades, it's not very corruptible, it's validable, we can validate it, and it's very easy exchangeable. You can just turn your entire app into a JSON file and export it. So that's it for the manifest system. I hope you find it interesting, and I really hope that it triggered you in some way to start play with it. If you want to play with it and you want to learn more about it, be aware we have an academy page. It's at conduction.nl/academy, and there we have a lot of tutorials, walkthrough, and additional information about how you can actually start and build apps with this.